Hey guys, Kelli Stewart here. Finally doing a live stream video. I have been sick, going on 3 weeks now of battling walking pneumonia. So thanks for bearing with me. I'm sorry I haven't done any live streams, but it's probably been a nice break for everybody, right? So what I am doing this live stream about is regarding the case in Nevada. It's time to call for a full dismissal. I've been speaking to a few of the attorneys there, and the information that we've been gathering about what really went on in the courtroom versus what was reported is absolutely astonishing. It's astonishing that it hasn't been made a bigger deal until now. John Lamb has been doing some really great updates. There was a few people that were reporting, but we really feel like there's some details that need to get out. Some of it couldn't get out at the time because everybody was in a little bit of shock trying to figure out what in the world they just heard and what just went on in the courtroom. So it's time to expose what actually happened in the courtroom and get this information out. I do have John Lamb on the line. John, you can go ahead and say hello to our listeners.
Hello everyone, I'm here. I'm going to take part in this and try to give you some more updates on what I actually heard there and try to process what I heard.
Can you guys hear John very clearly? Hang on just a minute, John, and we'll see if they can hear you. My phone's all the way up, so let's see. Give me a thumbs up if you guys can hear John okay. Maybe not. Okay, so we're just gonna dive into this. Okay, so the big news that came out in the courtroom that Greg Burleson at one time, for a long period of time, had been an informant for the government. That was the shocking news that kind of captivated everybody's attention. And that's really what I think most of us were focused on. And it kind of took away from what really went on in the courtroom and how absolutely blown open this case became with what happened, and how much the judge is just trying to cover this up and cover her tracks and keep right on moving like it didn't happen. And we cannot and we will not let her do that. We will be demanding for a full dismissal of charges, not a mistrial, a full dismissal of charges because of the violations that have gone on in this courtroom. We are going to need the public to help us with that. One thing that I am asking for is that the Portland team that has been amazing, I'm asking if we can pull together and get to Nevada within the next 2 weeks. This is a dark week, so no trial. Then the defense will be on for a week, maybe a week and a half, and then maybe 2 days for closing arguments. So if we could pull together and get a group of us to Nevada to kind of shake things up and get some truth out there and really do what we do best, right? Put some principled pressure on the judge to do what's right, on the officials there in Nevada, educating the people on the Strip out there as to what's going on in this courtroom, and just trying to do some things to maybe stir up some media attention, because right now in Nevada they're getting virtually zero media attention. So what went on in the courtroom that is what calls for a full dismissal? So okay, so when an agent takes the stand, if they have information that is helpful to proving the innocence of a defendant, they are required by law to disclose that information. So if they have a witness on the stand and the witness has previously worked with the government, we'll just say, since that's kind of the situation that happened, they are supposed to disclose the full facts around that. We had a lot of people take the stand in Oregon, and some of them even came out of it with some of the defendants asking, was that person actually an informant working for the government, based on how kind of shady their testimony was. I know we don't talk about this kind of stuff a whole lot because it doesn't help really after everything is said and done to bring up concerns with some of the witnesses that took the stand. But at the end of the day, most of the attorneys believe that the courts will follow the law. And that is, if they have an informant on the stand and they're talking and questioning this person that has been called as a witness, that they are required by law to disclose that that has been somebody they have previously worked with. They have a prior relationship to what's going on right then and there on the stand. They're supposed to say, this has been one of my working informants. We have communicated before. We have a prior relationship. So this is something that in Portland, some people have said, well, this person took the stand. They must not have ever been informing to the government. Another thing to kind of keep in mind is that Informants come in all shapes and sizes. Okay, so you have people who inform to the government and they receive no money. That's kind of like the MD Lauder situation with Thomas Lacavera, right? She informed the FBI that he was a felon with a gun, and then, a year later he was arrested and now is facing charges for that. So we have informants that are not paid. They're just willing participants, willing civilians that are going and informing information over to the FBI. Then you have the informants that are informed one time and they receive money and then they go on their way. And then you have the full-time working informants, and then you have the government agents who are undercover working. So there's this big umbrella of people who are willing to work with the federal government. And so just because somebody takes the stand does not mean they have not ever or are not working with the government. We would have assumed that they at least are not currently working with the government, because we would assume that the government is going to have to out their informant. But what we learned in Nevada is that even if they are currently working with the government, they do not have to disclose what that relationship is, even though they're supposed to. So we call this a Brady violation. So in case law, there was the case with Brady, and I don't even know who Brady was versus, but at the end of it, it came out that the government has to disclose if they have somebody on the stand and their information would help the defense. They cannot cover things up, especially regarding informants. So this is what happened in Nevada. So a week before Greg Burleson, and John, you can hop in here if I mess up any of this information. I've gotten some information from John, but I've gotten a lot of information from some of the attorneys down there and other people on the ground, and I want to make sure I get this right. So a week before it was outed that Greg Burleson was an informant, an agent took the stand, and this would have been Agent, what was his last name?
Adam Nixon. Agent Adam Nixon.
Yes, okay, so Adam Nixon takes the stand. I'm going to wipe my nose a little. I'm still sick, guys. Adam Nixon takes the stand. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Lindsay. Hi, Nikki. Hi, Shar. Hi, anybody else that's on. Adam Nixon takes the stand a week before Greg Burleson is outed. He discloses who he is. He's an FBI agent, and he says that he obtained a warrant so that he could search Greg Burleson's Facebook account. He then goes on to play very, very damning evidence against Greg, and more so against the rest of the defendants. This is Nixon. This is a week before we know that Greg has been working with the government. And I hope at the end of this it's going to tie in some stuff. People were saying, oh, he worked in the past as an informant. And so we're going to give you a couple dates that'll help kind of tie in why what he did is a really big deal and why we need to be demanding, not asking, demanding a dismissal.
With Adam Nixon, 2013, that's when we found out that he became Greg Burleson's handler in 2013.
Okay, wait, hold on, because I'm going to tie that in just a minute.
Okay.
So a week before we find out about Greg, Nixon takes a stand. He doesn't disclose anything other than he's the FBI agent and he has got a warrant, and now he's going to go ahead and disclose this information on Facebook. The information was very damning, bad videos, things that you would never hear come out of any of our mouths, of the people who have been on the ground in Portland or the people who have been on the ground in Nevada, Colorado. They're things that we just wouldn't have been saying. Then a week later, and this other agent's name, John, is?
Michael Caputo.
Michael Caputo takes the stand a week later. And he says that he has known Greg, but he does not disclose how, and he does not disclose that Greg was a working informant. It wasn't actually until Greg's attorney cross-examined him that was brought out. But I'm going to back up one second. So he takes the stand and gets to present information against Greg. But what he presents is recorded phone calls between he and Greg in late 2015, early 2016, okay, right around the time of the refuge that was going on. So even if we want to say, well, years before Greg was an informant, we don't know what happened after 2013, this agent, Caputo, is taking the stand to play recordings of he and Greg Burleson, right? It was this actual agent. Is that correct, John?
Yes.
Okay. And in these recorded phone calls, Greg was calling him, and he was saying things like, this is important, he was saying things like, I haven't been able to get anybody else to step up and do anything. The Oath Keepers are nothing but hashtag inappropriate word, hashtag inappropriate word, hashtag inappropriate word. So he's telling this agent that he's trying to ramp things up, but he isn't getting anybody to come on board with him. And this is supposed to be just talking to Greg as though he's a defendant, okay? And they're saying, look at how damning this evidence is against Greg. He's saying he wants to ramp things up. He wants to put people 6 feet under. He wants to get something done. Then his attorney cross-examines and is the only attorney allowed to cross-examine. When a witness is on the stand, everybody gets to cross-examine them. It is not pick and choose who you're going to let talk. This FBI agent was revealing very damning information about this conversation between he and Greg in late 2015, and nobody else got to cross-examine and ask any questions about this phone call. Why did this phone call happen? Who was it implying? Was he working for the government at the time that this phone call happened? Does it even matter? He's calling the FBI. Okay, do I need to know if he got paid in 2015? No, not really. He was working as an informant. Whether he got paid or not, it doesn't matter. He made a phone call in 2015 to an FBI agent saying, I'm trying to get things to be stepped up, but I'm having difficulties getting anybody to follow through. Then
when I looked at this here, because I got my notes out on this here, so he was kind of like just like another normal witness coming up. So I've got some notes here before I knew he was an informant, things I wrote down. And that was the biggest thing that caught our attention. When the prosecutor walked up there, they said, this is a limited testimony only for Greg Burleson. That's what they told us. And they asked the judge to make a statement on that no, everybody knew that the jurors knew that, and the other defense lawyers, and the judge agreed and accepted this limited testimony and said, this is one of those times, jurors, that this limited testimony, that no one else can ask questions except Greg Burleson's attorney, and this is only because of Greg Burleson's what we're about to be revealed here. And then they went on with that.
So then his attorney asks the FBI agent if he was working with Greg Burleson and if he was working as an informant. And then this agent, the second agent, John, he took him on in 2013, or Nixon took him in 2013?
Nixon, so Michael Caputo, and he hired or started paying Greg Burleson in 2012. Mm-hmm. He personally handled him for one whole year by himself. And then he had several projects going on. As he mentioned, these projects or jobs. Mm-hmm. And then in 2013, there was some more work they needed done that was kind of outside the area there in Arizona. Mm-hmm. So Adam Nixon became his second handler. Both agents continued. They never ever stated, and this question was asked, was there any time where you told him you no longer needed his services, or that he was no longer needed? Did you terminate him? And they said no. Neither. He was never ever terminated, as far as we know.
So he still had. So the reason that this is important, you guys, is because as this agent is saying that he quit working with Greg in 2013 and handed him off to Nixon, all the attorneys are sitting in the audience realizing the week before Nixon testified and revealed Facebook information and never stated that Greg Burleson was his informant. This is a really, 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 really big deal. It should have been disclosed when Nixon was on the stand the week before, when he said, I obtained a warrant to get information off Greg Burleson's Facebook. So we're all really confused, right? Is Greg really even in jail? So I was talking with one of the attorneys tonight as we were kind of wrestling through, okay, if this is happening, why would they have done this? Maybe they're working a deal on this end. And one of the options that was presented is that the attorney did know, Greg's attorney did know all along that Greg knew he was going to spend this year in jail, and that he knows in the end, even if he's convicted, he is not actually going to go to jail because of his cooperation with the government in not disclosing to anybody that he was an informant. That's one of the angles. The other angle is he hasn't been in jail at all. And this attorney said it would not surprise him at all if Greg has not actually been in jail at all, other than the times he's been visibly seen. But the rest of the time that he's actually been out. He's definitely been getting paid to do the things that he's done. To say in 2015 the things that he said, give some of the statements that he made about Cliven, John.
He would just say Cliven wasn't strong enough to stand on his own. He had to have people like himself there to make sure that he got through these things. One of the statements that came out really strong at me, and I wrote down, and this is before I knew he was an informant at this point, that he made a statement in this one recording. He says, "I'm not sure militia patriot." That's what he said to the FBI. "I'm not sure militia patriot." And different things like this he would say. And so he was like talking to this FBI agent like they're best friends. Like, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" So these are the things that when he called and he talked to this Caputo, they were best friends. You could tell by the conversation. And then Caputo would say, "I have a question. Did you actually wear camouflage out there at the ranch when you was there at the Bundy standoff?" And he would say, "No, I didn't. I wore camouflage. I wore a plate. I wore a vest. My stuff comes from because I have to work for everything I get. I can't afford the stuff like the other militia got, that the other militia have." These are the things and statements he would say. "Everything I own." And then the Caputo would say, "Do you still have that gun that you had the last time I seen you?" And he said, "Yeah, that old 308 that I have, that one I built, I still have that." Mm-hmm. Some of these things that he was saying was almost like this conversation was set up to ask this in tape recorder for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Knowing that it would be used in court.
Yes, knowing it would be used, because they was asking questions a year after the fact, a year and a half after the fact.
Right.
And we know that these informants don't only get paid money. Some of these informants can be criminals that actually have committed crimes that they're working off these favors. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the biggest things that caught my attention, too, is that he called in 2015, asking Adam Nixon, his second handler, for favors. And he actually called Michael Caputo asking for a favor. And that favor was, we found out, that Greg had been put on the watch list after the 2014 deal by some other FBI agents. And he was calling his handlers, trying to ask them how he could get off the watch list and continue doing what he was doing. Whatever he was doing, we don't really know. We just know that he was asking for favors. And then even after asking for them favors, he continues making phone calls up until early 2016 at some point, which we don't know the exact date of that. We just know they said late 2015 these phone calls were made. Early 2016 these phone calls were made. Mm-hmm. So that's the time frame we know, not an exact date or month.
So in all of his statements, they were incredibly inflammatory. He was wanting blood. There is nothing, in my opinion, in what I've heard that he said that's come out in the courts that would tell me that he hasn't been an informant working the entire time. So the fact that he is able to, that his testimony is even admissible at this point, when they did not disclose that he was an informant, John also said, or maybe the attorney told me, that he was actually arrested not long after his last phone call to his handler. So,
that's true.
So this whole thing, so the other things that were said to me that are becoming a big deal, that why we really need to push this dismissal, is some of the things that I'm being told is that this really isn't even a real court case, that this is absolutely set up, that it sounds crazy, right? Like, oh, it's all set up. Everybody's basically just actors in this. And a year ago, I would have said that's absolutely crazy. But knowing what I know now about Harry Reid and how he recommended Navarro, and Navarro was put in by Obama, and the land issues that we have with the Bundy Ranch, the Hammond Ranch, how important this land is, and the fact that Cliven is the last rancher in Clark County, the more I'm not putting it past the government at all to have this entire trial set up. I have been really critical of Judge Brown in Portland, because she kept, I mean, I now believe it, at least with this last case here in Portland, because it was absolutely set up. The defense was not able to bring their witnesses. The witnesses they called, they were not truly able to question them. Half the defense attorneys, in my opinion, weren't even working to try to get them found not guilty. And so I'm seeing how, and they were found, all of them were found guilty of a felony, and then almost straight across the board with their trespass, their misdemeanors, they were found guilty. So it's very, very different from the first time around, which is why we've been saying, unless God intervenes, there is no justice in these courts. So I've been really hard on Judge Brown because of how I've seen her behave and how biased she is. I have to go to Nevada just to actually see what's going on in this courtroom, because it's so bad that this attorney is saying to me, this isn't even real. The entire trial, it's not even real. Most of the people in the courtroom are nothing more than actors bringing forth what they believe will be their guilty verdict. If they're...
The reason we know this is because Longbow, you got to think about some of these scenarios. Mm-hmm. Longbow was invented before the Bundy Ranch standoff. Why
I didn't pick up on that.
What's that?
I didn't pick up on that originally.
So Longbow is a fake news, fake reporting thing that they're going out there to get this documentation thing they're going to put on TV. They buy a van, they buy camera equipment, they have meetings with the FBI to get improved so that this Agent Johnson can be in charge of this fake news media. It's set up before the Bundy Ranch standoff, and they're there at the Bundy Ranch standoff, and mingling with them, trying to ask them questions. And afterwards, Longbow continues questioning people for up to 2 years later, taking people's statements, traveling all over the country from Montana to Idaho and many other states, from Nevada, traveling around in a motorhome with 6 agents, meeting people in their homes, in hotels, in cabins, spending an enormous amount of money on alcohol to give these people alcohol when they're interviewing them, any type of food they want. They've done that for 2 years afterwards. Longbow, it's a setup. They set the Bundys up all along.
This absolutely is a setup.
But that's how I feel.
And so what this other attorney was saying is that unless there is enough of a public outcry and unless there's accountability to the judge by us showing up and saying we are demanding a full dismissal because of what's gone on, and there's plenty of laws that can be cited, there's case laws that can be cited, what is going on in this courtroom is not being truly told. And we need to get this message out, and people need to understand that if these charges are not dismissed, then the government will have basically been able to turn the United States of America into the Soviet Union. This is like Stalin. This is like the 1930s. This is not America. The government is absolutely acting as a shadow government. We do not have justice in these courts. If it's a case they don't care about, then maybe they'll let people win. But other than that, there is not going to be justice in the courts unless God's hand is 100% in it. We had a lot of attention on the first trial. No matter what we tried to do, it seemed, for the second trial. It literally felt like the attorneys weren't willing to work with the supporters and take any counsel and hear anything from us. I was, in fact, told by, I'm going to go and say it, one of the attorneys, when I said that I really was hoping Shauna Cox would take the stand, and David Fry and multiple other people, one of the attorneys literally told me that Marcus Mumford was nothing but a clown. They're so thankful he isn't in this courtroom, that they're not calling many of the first witnesses to the second trial because they didn't have the brains to be called to the witness stand. In fact, this attorney looked at me and said, you're giving me information from the perspective of a protester, but I'm looking at everything from the standpoint of the law. And so she said, I'm going to do what's best for my client and we will be found not guilty. And in the end, it was literally like a circus in that courtroom with some of the witnesses that were, sorry guys, my kids got 2 baby chicks this week and they want to keep them in a big nesting box in the house. So they're chirping. Anyway, there were things that happened along the way with this first trial that absolutely makes me feel like a few of these attorneys had been paid off to throw the case, because they just would not listen to any advice that was given to them about some of the people they were putting on the stand. And that's exactly what we're having in the second trial, or in the case down here in Nevada. And unless we can get the message out as to what's really going on and put some principled pressure on these people to do what's right and to dismiss this case. Look, Marcus Mumford filed the motion that got Juror 11 removed. Okay? So Juror 4 called out Juror 11 in the Oregon case. But the judge talked to Juror 11 and decided that they were still unbiased and they were able to move on, even after they were called out as being biased. It was Ammon's team that stayed up all night, and multiple other attorneys that stayed up all night presenting the motion that said the next morning, we are going to move for a mistrial if Juror 11 is not removed. And then she removed him. So for people who say, one, there's justice in the courts, we don't have to do anything, or two, God is sovereign, he will take care of things. I want to say this: God is sovereign, but you must act. You must act. And I absolutely believe that God's hand was upon those attorneys in that first trial, and they were unwilling to submit to the judge's authority. They knew they had the authority to challenge her, and they did. And I absolutely believe God's hand is what moved them to do that and brought about the not guilty verdict. These attorneys in Nevada should be leaving in handcuffs each day. They should be so irate at what's going on that every one of them are being arrested at the end of every day and being handcuffed. The spectators should all be getting arrested every day. We, as the public, going there should be. That's how bad this is right now in this trial. We should be so shocked that we cannot sit silently, that we're literally looking at people going, you have to stop this. This is unlawful. This is treason. This is a joke. This isn't truly due process. This is the American people being absolutely abused. So we want to go down there and do what we can. I'm asking that what we do is start making some calls. On the top of this live feed, I'm going to post Judge Navarro's chambers. I'm going to post a few other numbers. I want it to be I know they wouldn't be arrested, but Marcus Mumford was arrested and tased because that's how much he believed in his client. That's how much he believed in Ammon's innocence and Ammon's right to leave that day because the proper documents had not been presented. So I want to see some of this happening. I'm not going to just sit silent like I did this second trial and say, well, the public pretenders will take care of this. No, they're not taking care of this. They're not taking care of this. They're not taking care of this. The people have to do something. So
another statement from Greg I just found in my notes here, kind of going through all these pages, that seemed kind of strange to me. When he was talking to this FBI agent, he makes a statement, says, "Are you kidding me? I couldn't believe the FBI or the BLM were leaving. These militia from the Idaho are a bunch of morons, and these oath keepers, they were a bunch of morons." These are the things that he was saying to the FBI.
He was unhappy that there wasn't bloodshed.
He says, I wanted to fight, and I wanted to put some people 6 foot under. Remember, there was exact statements that he said. And so, like he was upset that these Idaho militia, these other Oath Keeper people were actually principled people that didn't want to fight. Because some of the same statements that, Eric Parker said, I wanted a peaceful end. I didn't go there for a fight. I did not want nobody to die. But here Greg is saying, are you kidding me? I couldn't believe the BLM were leaving. And he was upset that there wasn't,
So every one of Greg's statements should already be stricken from the record. As soon as it was disclosed that he was an informant, every attorney should have not only filed the documents for the motions for full dismissals, but they also then, when she denied that, should have immediately started slamming her with every motion out there to have his entire testimony stricken from the record, because the prosecution did not disclose with Agent Nixon the week before that he had a prior working relationship with Greg Burleson. So every one of his Facebook comments, every one of his Facebook videos, every one of those must be stricken from the record if they don't move for a full dismissal of this. So I'm going to post a couple phone numbers. So I want to see if we can try to hit it really hard tomorrow with a couple lines. Lee, my daughter's favorite song. So I think I'll only probably post 2 numbers, and I'm going to push it really hard. John is. We'll see if we can get Gavin in on this and make sure that people are making these calls. What I'm asking you guys to say is that because there was so many Brady violations, we're demanding for a full dismissal of all charges, and that every one of them are released. And then I'll put a few more notes in the post, maybe so that you guys have something you can just read to make this easy, so that we can use some legal jargon that helps it to sound like we kind of know what we're talking about. Hey, Deb. And if you guys could make these calls, that would be really great. We have the whole week off for Nevada, and we need to make sure that there is no rest in any of these offices. And we also need to be putting the same pressure on the public pretenders. Every one of these attorneys, there's a couple I hear that are really good down there, but there's a couple, Greg Loveland. Is it Greg Loveland? Why does that sound wrong? Ricky Loveland, thank you.
He's not doing anything.
He's not doing anything. Todd Ingles' attorney is not going to be at all worth his time. So Todd needs to represent himself. All Greg's stuff needs to be stricken from the record at this point. And we really just need a full dismissal. So I'll post some stuff. If you guys could help by making some calls, I'll also include an email. You guys could send some emails. And then I'm begging everybody from the Portland team. Lindsay, if you could join me too. Guys, if we do this 2 weeks out, round trip tickets are $100, $106 from Portland to Nevada. But it'd be really great if we could do a full, dismiss all charges campaign and get a group of people down there to stand with all the great people who have already been down there, and maybe put some positive principled pressure on these people to do what's right. Sometimes just having eyes in that courtroom when they know that people are getting stuff done, sometimes that puts a little bit of positive pressure on the judges. There's all kinds of things. Heck, here in Portland, we've got protesters that are actually sleeping outside of the mayor's house, asking for a full resignation from him. And they're upset because an African-American was shot, and he had just finished, I believe, robbing a bank, and they thought he was reaching for a gun. It ended up being a fake gun, but he was killed, and people have been protesting and fighting over this. So I'm not going to condemn anybody for their reasons for protests, but I'm going to say if they can go out and stand up for this individual who was actually robbing people's property, I commend them for going and taking a stand and being willing to show up. But I'm going to ask that, we really pull together. I totally get that, Julie, and maybe we could pull together and get some airline miles and get you there. Maybe we can work together as a team to try to make something happen. Maybe you and David Fry could carpool and take a little road trip and get here. I don't know. Just whoever can. If you can't, there's plenty that can be done behind the scenes on making phone calls if you're not able to get to Nevada. But I'm going to say 2 weeks, as many people from Portland as we can. If we have to just do a big caravan and get everybody packed into my rig, we will. But it's like a 14-hour drive, so I'd much rather fly. So we need people in Nevada in 2 weeks for the end of the defense and the beginning of closing arguments, and we need to make sure that these charges are fully dismissed. And we have people that are behind us. We've got a couple good attorneys, and we've got some great people on the legal side that can help us articulate why these charges need to be dropped in a more legal and educated fashion. So that's what I'm asking. Is there anything you want to add, John?
I can't think of anything, but we do need the support for sure. So I hope we have a lot of people there next week.
And then this is a long live stream. I can't see how long this has been, but if we could also get some calls made in the next couple days to, I called and left a message regarding Ryan Payne, Ryan Bundy, and Ammon Bundy. They're in solitary confinement because they're refusing to be strip searched. You guys, they haven't been convicted of any crime. They haven't lost any of their rights in jail. They're basically there just for detention so that they show up to trial. They're already being denied their right to bail. And on top of that, now they're in solitary confinement. This is just absolutely ridiculous. So the number, I have got that right here if you want to write it down. You can actually call it right now and leave a message. It's 703. If somebody could type this for me, please, out on the text, on the thread to 703-740-8400. Again, that's 703-740-8400. And that's the U.S. Marshal Service. And I called and demanded that all three of them be removed from solitary confinement. Thank you, Tammy. And I gave my name and number and said that they have an obligation to the United States Constitution to not administer cruel and unusual punishment. And they absolutely are not abiding by that. And that we need these guys out of solitary confinement. So please make that...
Understand the government has actually legalized rape. They're raping these men, raping these other people in jail. And we don't want to use that word, or we don't want to talk about it, but that is exactly what is happening.
Yep.
If anybody was ever treated like that in a civilian world, people would be in prison for it.
Yep.
And these people, without even cause, any reason they want to, multiple times a day, the guys that are going to court right now are getting literally strip searched 4 times a day, if not more. They get strip searched before they leave the jail. They get strip searched before they go into court. They get strip searched when they leave court. They get strip searched again when they get back to jail. They've got marshals around. They're watched constantly. It's uncalled for to get strip searched that many times and where they're doing it. And it's forced on them. If they don't, they get consequences, and they get locked in solitary confinement and other types of, without food, sprayed down with water while they're naked for 15 minutes at a time, cold water, these shock treatments. These things are uncalled for.
Yeah, in a civilized nation, you guys, we just can't let this go. These men will absolutely come out of this with post-traumatic stress syndrome at the very least, and they will suffer most likely the rest of their lives from what they have already endured. So we have to be their voice right now and speak up for them. So call right now and at least please leave a message demanding that Ryan Payne, Ryan Bundy, and Ammon Bundy be taken out of solitary confinement. And then we'll do the post tomorrow. Please, please, please make the calls demanding for a full dismissal. And we can also send some emails. The people need to show up. We need to show up, and we need to do what we can do. These charges have to be dismissed and dropped in Nevada. So I think that's it. I think we should end this. Is that okay, John?
That sounds great. Thanks. Thanks, everybody, for joining.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'll put some dates out there also when I'll be in town in Nevada. But really, whoever can be there, maybe we'll pick like a 3-day rally period where we'll try to get out-of-towners to all fly in, and we'll do a big campaign, dismiss all charges campaign, and I don't know, we'll just do what we can do. That's all we're doing, right? We can't quit, we can't give up, right? What we do today echoes into eternity. So let's remember that, and let's be these guys' voices. So that's all. Love you guys. Keep standing.